How to Lead Effective Bible Studies group. Is that what you're in here for? Just make sure you're awake, that's all. This is Effective Neighborhood Evangelism. We're going to go ahead and get started. I recognize that we're a little late in finishing at the O'Connell Center, but we've got a lot to discuss this morning and very little time to discuss it. I was all prepared to order out the Domino's Pizza so we could sit here and take our lunch break here, but I was told I only have 50 minutes of tape, so I'll go as quickly as I can. My name is Andy Lindo. This is my wife, Rita. I'm the evangelist at the Mission Congregation in San Diego, California. And we really feel it a real honor to be asked to do this class. We're going to share some things with you that we have found to work, and some things that we've been doing that I hope will help you. First of all, I want you to turn to Hebrews chapter 8. We're going to begin reading there. 8th chapter of Hebrews. In verse 10. This is the covenant I will make with the house of Israel after that time, says the Lord. I will put my laws in their minds and write them on their hearts. I will be their God, and they will be my people. No longer will a man teach his neighbor. Now, I recognize that this is scriptural warrant for what hasn't been happening in some places, but that's really not what it's talking about, okay? So we're not going to talk about this morning about how no longer to teach your neighbor. We're going to talk about how to teach your neighbor, how to reach your neighborhood. That was a joke that really is not the beginning scripture this morning. But we have just been very excited about what's been happening and are eager to share it with you, and hopefully to encourage you and challenge you to do greater things in your neighborhoods. Let me just tell you a little bit about our old neighborhood. We just recently moved into a new one. Let me tell you about our old one. We were renting a house for 4 years, and 2 years, I guess, or 3 years. We bought it and lived in it in a year, but we were in our old house a total of 4 years and didn't see anyone come to the Lord. Let me tell you why. We were never home. You might want to write all these things down. We were never home. We really had no vision for that neighborhood, and therefore had no faith in that neighborhood and seeing people won to Christ. Really had very little vision. We were involved with the college and the singles ministry. Just didn't have a vision for what could happen in the neighborhood. And there was very little effort put forth. We got people to come to church and on some occasions or to vacation Bible school, that kind of thing. But there was very little effort, and I think those three things will spell failure in any neighborhood. Okay? You're never home. Got too busy working the kingdom, so you're never home. You don't have a vision for your neighborhood, and you put very little effort in it if you're there. And I'm not proud of these things, but we made a decision when it came time to move that it was no longer going to be that way. Our new neighborhood, we've been here 1.5 years. We have 2 Bible talks going on, 1 couples and 1 women's. We've had 3 conversions, 2 who will be baptized pretty soon after we get back, 1 right after that, 3 who are coming along. We have 36 people out of that neighborhood that have come to either church or to a Bible study in the last probably 8 to 10 months, maybe a year. The word of God, the Lord is spreading through that neighborhood like a wildfire. We're just going to talk about that a little bit later. Just gives you an indication of what can happen, just the change, mainly because of the change in our attitudes. And I believe that God is ready to move mountains in our neighborhoods. God is ready to do unbelievable things if we'll start walking by faith, living by faith, acting on faith, and doing what God tells us. Not living by the equation that I just mentioned that spells failure, but living by the equations that spell success and that spell fruit. We've got to believe that God has placed us in our neighborhoods and that great things can happen, that people there need the gospel, they need to be saved, and are receptive in every way and begin to work for it. Now let me tell you a little bit about our attitude as we went into our new neighborhood. First of all, we made a decision, and it was coupled with intense desire to be fruitful. We just really want to be fruitful in this new neighborhood. A lot of things that happened in our lives, we'd come to a lot of conclusions, a lot of decisions. We've been greatly challenged by many of the ministries, by Boston, New York, and other places, and we really wanted to be fruitful. So that was the first thing. We had an intense desire to be fruitful. And we prayed for 2 things. We prayed that God would lead us into a neighborhood that would be receptive. Okay, now some of you are already in neighborhoods. Don't think you got to move. Start praying for open hearts. That's what we were praying for. We were praying for a neighborhood where there would be open hearts, where God was working. And secondly, when we finally found this neighborhood totally by accident, and you know how that is in the Christian's life, totally by accident, we prayed intensely that we would not be approved for the loan if God didn't want us in there. And we had everything. So that was a pretty sure bet, okay, that it wouldn't go through if it wasn't the Lord's will. And it was a nearly impossible situation. So that was the first thing. We wanted to be fruitful. Secondly, when we moved in there, we saw our house as a tremendous blessing. And I'm serious. We have some cathedral ceilings in our house, and whether they were there or not, it really doesn't matter. But we would look up, and you just look farther in a cathedral ceiling than you do in an 8-foot. But you'd look up and you'd say, wow, I can't believe it. We were awestruck by the fact that we'd been placed in this neighborhood, that God had worked things out, and we were in awe and believed it to be a tremendous blessing. Everything had worked out perfectly for the house. I won't go into all the details, but on about 6 fronts, everything worked out perfectly. We believed it was the Lord's will, believed it was a tremendous blessing, almost at times frightened by the immensity of the responsibility that we've been given. And I believe that whether you're just moving in and you've been there, you've got to recognize that you have an immense responsibility. That house belongs to the Lord. My house belongs to God, and we believe it with all our hearts. And so we feel an intense responsibility, and we are awestruck by the need to use that house for the purpose for which it was provided. I don't think enough of us see our houses that way. They are our castles, our refuge. Our house is filled with people on a weekly basis, Christian and non-Christian. It's not our home, it's everybody's home. And I think we've got to have that perspective, that attitude. It is the Lord's. He has given it to us. I just was able to have it initially because we moved from one place to another, but it's something that we have to have, I believe, in order to be convinced and convicted about the use of that house. We want to be fruitful. We saw it as a blessing and understood the tremendous responsibilities that were placed on our shoulders, that God intended for us to use that home for Him. Thirdly, and just as importantly, but for me, a real important step was that we had great faith. We made decisions to walk by faith, and we had faith, first of all, in Acts 17, that God had determined the times and places where we should habitate and where they should habitate, and there were people in that neighborhood that He was drawing to Himself. Everybody was to hear the gospel, but we believe there were some there that were ripe, that the fields were ripe to harvest, and we just started working with that in mind, believing it. We'd prayed for it, we believed in God, we believed that we were put there for a purpose, and in fact, we share that with everyone we share with in that neighborhood. When we get them to a point where they're becoming receptive, and we're sort of in the beginning stages of their understanding what we're there for, we tell them, we were put here for a purpose, and we believe you are that purpose. And so far, everyone we've told that to, that we've worked with, has become a Christian. So they believe that that's our purpose, you see. They believe that they're the ones that are open when we share it with them. We believe that intensely, that God has put us there, and there are those there that He wants us to reach. Secondly, we had faith that it could be done in neighborhood situations. And I recognize it has been, but for us it hadn't been, you see. So it had to take great faith. We had to walk by faith. We had to just keep believing that it could be done in neighborhoods. And then, my vision, I told you before I didn't have vision. My vision, when we were talking about it when we first moved in, Rita said, honey, won't it be great when we baptize 1 or 2 people out of this neighborhood? And I'm not saying this to put her down at all, but just to show you how much our faith has grown. And I said, no, honey, I want to drive down this street and be able to wave at people like we do now, because it's a pretty friendly neighborhood, and wave at them because they're our brothers and sisters. I said, I want a Christian commune. I'm looking for a Christian community. That's really what I wanted. I had my heart set on that, and that is exactly what we're working for. We are working to see that place be a Christian community, where when you drive down the road, there are bunches of Christians, and it's becoming a reality. By our faith in God, by His working, by His grace, it's becoming a reality. I think you've got to have that vision, that it can be a community, not just 1 or 2 people, fighting the tremendous odds, but that God has put you there for a purpose, that there are people who are open, that you want to be fruitful, that it's His house to be used for His purposes, and that many are going to respond to the gospel of Jesus Christ. Being abundantly fruitful, not just 1 or 2 converts. Then, And another thing, the fourth thing fourth attitude was we were going to look at it as a dormitory. We stopped and we thought about our years in college. And a lot of you probably have come out of that situation. We stopped, we thought, okay, our years in college, what were they all about? Dormitory living. We were the most fruitful when we lived in dormitories, or maybe you lived in a sorority or where people were living together, where there was a lot of dynamics working. So we identified a few of them. We said, okay, the most effective times in our lives were in dormitories. So here's what we saw. In a dormitory, you have high visibility. Okay? We determined that there was going to be high visibility in our neighborhood. People were going to see us. We were going to be there. Remember, the old neighborhood, we're never there. We made a decision, we are going to be in that neighborhood. People are going to see us, we're going to see them, we're going to involve ourselves with people. Secondly, in a dormitory, you have daily contact. You walk down the hall and you can't help but have daily contact. We need daily contact in our neighborhoods. Daily contact with great numbers of people. Thirdly, in the dormitory, friendships. You made friendships, okay? Some might have been harder than others, but there was almost a natural catalyst in a dormitory situation. We looked at our neighborhood and we said, this is our dormitory. This is not our home. This is our dormitory, and our home's our bedroom, okay? Streets are the common areas. And I won't go any farther with my analogies. Okay, so we saw the friendships needing to develop. Also in a dormitory, we had similar interests. Remember, we had intramural football and that kind of thing. There's all kinds of things going on in the dorm. You tended to gravitate towards similar interests. So that was another situation that we wanted to exploit or to use. Another one in the dormitories was that we always served non-Christians. They were there, we were there. Their needs were very apparent to us. We were there together, and we had an opportunity to serve them, to do things for them. Right there, drop cakes by their door. My wife used to do that all the time. Just do things for people. So I said, okay, this is our dormitory. We're going to serve people in this neighborhood. Next thing is hospitality. I remember one of the things that I used to do all the time was to get non-Christians into my room or to go into their room. There's something about having someone in your home, in your room, or being in their home, in their room, that adds a degree of personalness, of personality, of unity that isn't there just when you meet someone at the gasoline pump. And so that's something that we want to incorporate, the hospitality aspect of a dormitory. And then just doing a lot of things together, whether they're common interests or not. Sports, movies, food, going to classes together. We decided that was our concept, a dormitory concept. Are you grabbing this at all? You see, it made sense to us. If we just viewed it as a dormitory and tried to pick out the dynamics of the dormitory and why it worked so well for us, we would infuse that attitude into our bodies, in our hearts, in our minds, and work the same way in our neighborhood. And that is, to a large degree, what is happening. We're seizing these kinds of opportunities. High visibility, daily contact, friendship, similar interests, serving, hospitality, and doing a lot of things together. And then lastly, our attitude was that we were going to work hard. And I think that's one thing. Faith and hard work are two things that really would characterize our ministry, I think. It's been the biggest change in my life. Just hard work. Hard work. I get to the point sometimes when I pray that God will cancel an appointment or a Bible study or something because I've had so many, I'm so busy, I'm so tired. Lord, please. Or, if that's not what you're going to do, then give me the strength. I mean, that's what you're doing. You're just working so hard that you are either hoping for a cancellation, which you really don't want, or for greater strength, which you get. And I got both. One of the things we found is you fill your schedule up with these kinds of things in your neighborhood, and He'll find ways to give you slack, cut you slack, give you the relaxation you need. But work hard. It is essential that we get in there and work hard. We make use of our opportunities of mornings, noons, evenings, and making use of times that we might not be able to get with non-Christians, okay? Get with Christians at times when, when they'll sacrifice. A non-Christian might not get with you at 12 at midnight, but a Christian might. So use those times during the week, right after work when they come home. Be home, okay? In the mornings when they run, get up early. Work hard. Be there when they're there. So that is basically the attitudes that we've had, those 5 things, okay?
I'm going to share some of my attitudes, too, that really changed, that really benefited me so much. And I can't really say that when I was in college I was just real fruitful in the dorms, because even though I've been a women's counselor for about 10 years, I've never really been personally abundantly fruitful. It's been, like maybe a person a year that I've personally met has become a Christian, and I've never really had that kind of to be abundant. The Bentleys came out last December, and Lisa and Steve Johnson came out in March, I guess. And those 2 sessions just helped me so much to help me to be convicted that I needed to demand that of myself. And I went forward at church, and I told the congregation that I was committing myself to them. To look out, to watch out for my life, to change in these areas. And I had the faith that God would change me in those areas, and it was really scary for me to do that, but I knew God would make those changes. These are some of the scriptures that helped me to come to some new convictions that really helped me in understanding the dynamics of being effective in our neighborhood. Let's turn to Matthew 5. Verse 14, you are the light of the world. A city on a hill cannot be hidden. Neither do people light a lamp and put it under a bowl. Instead, they put it on its stand, and it gives light to everyone in the house. In the same way, let your light shine before men, that they may see your good deeds and praise your Father in heaven. One thing I think that a lot of people have a hard time with in their neighborhood is not, they can't be a city set on a hill because their neighborhood really isn't a hill. If you understand what I mean, people very rarely know each other in the neighborhood, so really a Christian's life doesn't really make an impact in the neighborhood because there's no hill, if you understand what I mean. I've tried to envision each neighborhood as making it into a hill, kind of clumping it up together and getting your neighborhood together. I think at one time I was real intimidated when my non-Christian neighbors would get to know each other and get real friendly with each other. It was threatening to me because I thought, oh boy, they're all frenzy and I'm left out of the picture here. Well, encourage those relationships in your neighborhood. Not that you're the only friendly person, but encourage that among the people. And we've seen how this has just been a tremendous thing in our neighborhood because we have encouraged that in our neighborhood, and a lot of people have encouraged that in our neighborhood. But because people knew each other so well in our neighborhood, then when one person came around, everybody started seeing what was happening. It's kind of like you get that momentum going when everybody knows each other, like in a dormitory situation. When that first person becomes a Christian, everybody starts, perking up and noticing what's going on. One of the things that I did early on last summer was start a play group. All the young moms in the neighborhood get together once a week, and I just met as many young moms as I could, and everyone I met, I said, do you know any more in the neighborhood? And I'd see somebody walking through the neighborhood with a little child, and I'd stop my car and jump out and hi, I'd just meet them right there and then and get their phone number. And it was wonderful. Everybody was so positive about this idea of getting together once a week with our children, letting our children play, and us being able to talk to each other. And it's helped so much to have weekly contact and to build those friendships. We've had group dinner parties where we would be the only Christians. This is something we never did before, having 6 or 8 non-Christians and then us. And it was something that we used to be afraid of. We always thought, well, we have to outnumber them, in order to really make an impact. And that's just not true. We can be a city set on a hill. When one of my neighbors had pneumonia, I called up a bunch of my neighbors and had them bring meals. And another time, I would have just called Christians. But I think it's real important for people to see that I belong to them and they belong to me, like in a dormitory situation, to get that hill together so that the city set on a hill can't be hidden. I had a food drive for a person who was babysitting for our Bible study. I had a food drive in the neighborhood at Christmas time. So again, they felt like a part of a community, and they were drawn closer to one another. Babysitting children, just really encouraging that among people, and lending out Drew to situations that I know at another time I would have just said, well, let me find a Christian. I don't want my child going to this non-Christian's home. And yet I think that was one of the things that has really helped them to feel like I'm one of them. In a sense, and they'll see the differences, but I think in so many social ways we keep ourselves apart and aloof from the rest of the neighborhood. So get your city together. One of the other scriptures that really helped so much was Matthew 9:37, talking about the harvest is plentiful, but the workers are few. Just really believing and not doubting that God is going to have a plentiful harvest out there, and really believing it. It's our doubting that causes so much of our ineffectiveness. And then John 4:34 through 38. God says that the hard work has already been done, but those fields are white for harvest. He says the hard work has already been done. Somebody's already done it for you. And it's been so encouraging to me to know that God is working on those people. Listen, I'm working hard, but in comparison to what God's done, it's nothing. When you start thinking about all that God has to do to get somebody into a neighborhood, to open up their hearts, to cause situations to arise in their lives, it's just incredible how much hard work God has put into each one of those neighbors' lives. I'm just doing the easy stuff. God is just saying, here's this vineyard. You just go out and pick all you want. See? And you can just pick as long as you're in this vineyard. You just reap it. All the work's been done for you. You just get out there and reap it. And see, really, that's what our attitude now is that God's got them out there. He's got plenty of people out there in that neighborhood. We just have to go pick them. We just have to go harvest what God has already done. Andy mentioned before that Christianity is spreading like wildfire in our neighborhood, and it's so exciting because I've never personally experienced that myself. In the New Testament, we read all through Acts. I did a study through Acts and saw how much of the attitude of the people was toward Christianity was like a wildfire. They were scared that it was going to overtake them, and it was something that was just so powerful in the minds of non-Christians. I had never felt that way before in my own personal ministry, that people were feeling like, wow, this is sweeping across the nation, and that's the way it is in Acts. Let me just read through some of these. Numbers of disciples increased rapidly. They continued to increase and spread. The word of the Lord spread through the whole region. It says all Jews and all the Greeks heard the word in that area. The word of the Lord spread widely. And even the criticisms of Paul, it was like they were talking about a wildfire. Paul's convinced and led astray numbers of people here on Ephesus, and especially in practically the whole province of Asia. See, people were thinking, is it going to get me next? Type of an attitude. And that's what we're seeing in our neighborhood. It's just wonderful. They're just, they're scared to death they're going to fall into it. We were teaching a child rearing class in my neighborhood, in the ladies' Bible study in my home, and after a few weeks of that, one of the neighbors said to one of my other neighbors, she said, what is all this discipline junk going around the neighborhood? And she just couldn't believe how people were talking so much about Christian child rearing principles. Another neighbor said, she said, well, I guess she was really upset with one of my neighbors who was getting very interested. She says, well, I guess when it all boils down, I guess I'm just a little jealous of what's happening in your life. And she said, I'm just afraid I'm going to lose you to them. She was seeing us as in the majority, and there's 60 homes in our immediate little neighborhood. It just started out me and Andy being the only Christians, but she had the attitude that we were, because it's so powerful. Mary Wynn, one of my neighbors who has since become a Christian, when she was first anticipating going to church the first day, she said, I'm just scared to go. She said, I feel like I'm on the edge of a whirlwind. She just, she felt like she was going to get sucked into this thing that was happening in the neighborhood. Christina, a girl who started coming last fall and stopped coming for a while, when she saw other people getting interested, she came to me, she said, Rita, what is going on in the neighborhood? People are really getting interested. It's really catching on here, isn't it? And at that point, that's when she got reinterested. See, peer pressure can work for your good if you've got your hill together, if people know each other. They're going to be influeensed by one another. And finally, Maureen, one of our new Christians in the neighborhood, said to a lady who has just recently moved into the neighborhood, she said, she was telling her about all the different activities, and she said, yeah, Clarice, we have play group on Thursdays, and on Fridays we have the neighborhood Bible study. And, it's just like something that everybody goes to, and it's just a wonderful feeling to know that it's spreading like wildfire, and people are reacting that way to it.
Let me just give you a brief history of or just a makeup of our neighborhood. I think you've got to scout out the land in your neighborhoods or wherever you're planning to move. It's important to scout out the land to get a good perspective of what's going on. And not every neighborhood is the same. In fact, now when I travel through neighborhoods, I was in Charlotte and I've been in Gainesville, and I'm looking for things now that I'm really attuned to see how would I do it here and how would I do it there. Every neighborhood is different, and we have been blessed to be in a situation what God has done is He's put us in a situation by which we can see some dynamics and see some things that would work and some things that need to be done where we're in a different neighborhood. When we move, we'll do the same thing and trying to pull it together. This idea of pulling your hill together, I think, is just vital. It's important. It's necessary. And I recognize also that when people start getting negative, which some have gotten, it will work also. But we're not concerned about that right now. We're concerned about really pulling the hill together and making sure that people see the light of the world and the salt of the earth that's being converted on that block. Let me just tell you about our neighborhood. As we scouted out the land, we wanted to go somewhere where there weren't other Christians. We didn't want to oversaturate any one area. We wanted to go where there weren't Christians. And as we found this place, again, as I said earlier, by accident, I was told by a realtor, go over on that hill over there and look for houses. And I missed the street completely, and I ended up in this neighborhood. And this neighborhood is great. It has 3 phases. The phase we're in is the first. They built that first, and they built the second one. Now they're building the third. So new people are constantly moving in. And then within a half a mile, we've got 2 other new neighborhoods, and then about a mile away, we've got 3 other new neighborhoods. So it'll be expanding. And already we're seeing it expand into one neighborhood through a business contact. A sister in our congregation has had a business contact with a lady in another neighborhood nearby. And then Mark, the dentist that I worked with, his partner is moving into about the 4th neighborhood over. So when we convert him, we'll have a Bible talk in his neighborhood. So that's what we were looking at. You've got to scout out the land and be strategic about what you want to accomplish and how you're going to accomplish it. Our neighborhood basically is a Beaver Cleaver neighborhood. This is where Beaver is going to grow up in the 80s. There's no white picket fences because they don't allow them, but it's basically that kind of neighborhood. We are really blessed. It's an attractive neighborhood. People really take pride, and I don't know if you've been to California or not, but a lot of neighborhoods there, I mean, there's like 17 RV vehicles parked out in their front lawn, and there's oil all over the streets where they change their oil, and the grass is 3 feet tall. You know, people just don't really take much care. They don't have much self-respect. In this neighborhood, people take care of their things, their houses. There is a pool and some tennis courts, which really have helped to pull that city together. It's a common area. If you have a common building where there's ping pong or something, or anything like that will help. We have holiday get-togethers, 4th of July barbecues. We have Christmas parties, Halloween parties for the kids. We do things together as a neighborhood, both things that they've initiated and we've initiated, but we have that kind of a community spirit. It's Beaver Cleaver. But, on the other hand, the children are brats. There's no discipline. We've already had 2 divorces. Now, this is only a 2-year-old neighborhood. We've had 2 divorces. 2 people have moved, or one has moved out and others trying to sell their house because they're divorcing. They have shallow relationships. They have empty lives. They are unhappy and materialistic. When you drive into my neighborhood, you will be struck by everything that's outward. Okay? But what is on the inside? They're unhappy. They're really unfulfilled deep down. The children are going to be juvenile delinquents if they don't straighten them up. And that's why this discipline thing is hit so hard, because they're starting to see it. We've had so many, compliments about Drew, because he's so unlike the rest of the children. And I praise God for that because of the teaching that we've had that we can now pass on. Now, in scouting out the land, you've also got to view the obstacles. Here's some of the obstacles. We believed and still believe that God can overcome them. You've got to scout the land. You've got to see the good and the bad and have faith that God can work through the bad or the difficulty. First of all, it is an upper middle class. You've probably gathered that. God blessed us with some income and some monies that we weren't expecting, and we're able to move in. We wanted to reach some leadership-type people for a long time, and God worked it out. It is an upper middle class neighborhood, very well-educated people, extremely well-educated. As Kip was talking about Harvard last night, I thought, this is like the Harvard of the neighborhoods. It really is. It was extremely intimidating to us. Extremely intimidating. People are into sports in different ways. They're into Sunday morning, this is a big problem, Sunday morning soccer and softball and baseball and basketball leagues. But also, let me just tell you, we've got Stan Smith's brother living on the block. We have the wide receiver coach of the San Diego Chargers on the block. We have the public relations officer for the San Diego Chargers. You don't know who the San Diego Chargers are. Just wait. You'll find out this year. We have the We have the personnel manager for the San Diego Clippers, who are now the LA Clippers on the block. We have a lot of lawyers and doctors and managers and accountants. It's that kind of a neighborhood. So it was an obstacle to us. How hard it is for the rich to enter the kingdom. We viewed that as an obstacle, but not one that was impossible. With man, all things are impossible. With God, all things are possible. It was socially intimidating. They are hard workers. And I believe it's these kinds of people, when they become Christians, have the same attitude toward their Christianity they do toward work. They are hard workers, but right now, that is their life. Work and sports. Extremely successful people. Self-motivated in every sense of the word. They think they've got it together. They say, great job, great marriage, great family, great shape. We've got a guy that is, what is it, triathlete? Is that it? Decathlete, whatever it is. I mean, he's either on his bike, running, or swimming every day. If you want to talk to him, I drive my car and sort of run alongside him to, And then also, tremendous cliques, okay? We have tried to get that hill together, but some people knew each other before they were there, and some people knew each other before we got there. We were some of the last to get there, so we had to break into the cliques. So these are real obstacles that I think intimidate a lot of Christians, but obstacles that we believed God could overcome as we had faith in Him and in our work.
The kind of faith that Andy's talking about, it really is mountain-moving faith for us. In Matthew 21:21, Jesus replied, I tell you the truth, if you have faith and do not doubt, not only can you do what was done to this fig tree, but also you can say to this mountain, go throw yourself into the sea, and it will be done. If you believe, you will receive whatever you ask for in prayer. We really start putting this into practice, start having faith in this. It says, if you have faith and do not doubt. You just have to struggle with your doubts to crucify them. No, I'm not going to give up. Are going to become Christians. I believe, God, you're answering our prayers and not allow ourselves to give in to doubts. They're just not open. And I can't break into this. I remember the first time I met Maureen, our first convert. I thought, I came home crying. I met her, and she just seemed so rude to me. And I thought, what am I doing in this neighborhood? Who am I? A big nobody, blundering around the neighborhood. I thought, what am I doing here? And I came home and I cried to Andy, and I was so embarrassed because 20 minutes later she came to my front door with her little boy, and she said, boy, I'm sorry I was so rude to you. I had to take care of a situation there with my lawn man, and I just wanted to come over and visit with you. And we talked for about an hour. I mean, God just has been just opening up our minds and opening up our eyes to what can be done. And we just have to really believe and not doubt that our name is open no matter what your past experience has been, no matter what kind of efforts you've made up to this point. Philippians 2:13 has been a real helpful scripture to me to see how we need to relinquish those reins to God, that He's going to get the job done if we believe and do not doubt. This has been just a real working scripture in my life. Philippians 2:13, it says, for it is God who works in you to will and to act according to His good purpose. Every time you get a good intention, isn't it easy to just kind of pat yourself on the back and say, wow, I am going to bring a meal over to my neighbor. Oh, what a good intention. You can feel pretty good about yourself, but when you start realizing that God is in you to will anything that's according to His purpose, then you start getting a lot more obedient to His will. Whenever that will comes up in you to do something for one of your neighbors, get obeying, because that's God in you to will that desire. In other words, when we get a desire to do something bad, we say, oh, Satan's tempting me. But see, when we get a desire to do something good, we say, oh, aren't we sweet? Aren't we good? We have such good intentions. We have so many good intentions that never get fulfilled because we don't see that it is God in us to will. So how this is working practically is every time I get the desire to call somebody and ask them to a Bible study, man, I get on the horn. I just do it because I believe now that God is in me to will it. Not that He's not little voices in my ear or anything like that, but God is giving me the desire to do His will. When I have the desire, the will to meet somebody new that I heard just moved in, that I go ahead and initiate, knowing that that's God moving in my life, trying to complete His will through me. And that's just helped me so much. Proverbs 16:3 is a scripture that helps us to see how much God will help us in these situations where we think so many of the times everything depends on us. Commit to the Lord whatever you do, and your plans will succeed. Commit to the Lord, whatever you do, and your plans will succeed. I had done this on a Wednesday night class, this little passage, and then the following day I was at my play group, and I knew I needed to set up this Bible study with Maureen. I had been procrastinating for 2 months. That's terrible, but I'd been telling all my prayer partners, I need to set up this Bible study with Maureen. I just haven't done it. It's just terrible, I know. And every week it'd be the same old song, you know. I just felt terrible about it. Finally, I committed it to the Lord, and I said, Lord, I'm committing to you. I'm going to set up this Bible study this morning. Do you hear me? I'm going to do it. I'm walking over there right now. And I started moseying on over to Maureen, and all these thoughts started coming into my mind like, you know, all these people are here. What are your neighbors going to think if you start talking about the Bible to Maureen in front of them? No, I better not do it. No, I'm going to do it. I'm committing it to you, Lord. I'm going to do it. I don't care who's here, no matter who hears. And I started walking over there. The most amazing thing happened. People started clearing out early from playgroup. See, if you commit your plans to the Lord, He will establish them. He will work it out. If you tell God you're going to do something, and you're stubborn about it, God, I'm going to do it. You just give me the words, you just work it all out. And as I talked to Maureen, not only did the people clear out, and we were the only ones standing there, but as we talked, she brought up her desire she was saying, Rita, I just don't know. I'm really torn between your church and the Catholic Church. I just don't know what to do. And I said, well, Maureen, I guess we'll just have to get together and study the Bible about it. And, it just worked out wonderfully. God established my plans. God worked it all out for me. We really have to believe that God is going to work in there with us. I hope you understand what I'm talking about. That we're in the yoke with God. We're working with Him. He's going to do so much for us. It tells us so often in Acts how God is going to work in people. And, I have many people in this city, God would say. It says that He opened up Lydia's heart to respond to Paul's message. God can open up people's hearts. It says He opened up the door of faith to the Gentiles. See, God can do it if we're really committing our lives to Him, our plans to Him. We're telling Him we're going to do something for Him, and then He'll work it out. In Job 22, it talks about how if you promise God you're going to do something, He'll shine light on your path. In other words, He'll show you just exactly how to do it. If you promise Him, you'll do it. If you get stubborn with yourself and say, God, I'm going to do it, I don't know how I'm going to do it, but God will work it out for you. And we just really have faith in that.
I guess you're catching the drift of what we're saying. I mean, our lives have just been revolutionized by the whole idea of faith and just believing and doing what we know to be right, what we know to be true. We had a similar situation in a Bible study. We started a neighborhood Bible study several months after we moved in. And, we were sitting there shaking our boots because we thought, is anybody going to show up? And we prayed about it together one night, and I got on the phone, and I just started making phone calls, one right after another, we'd already talked to people, just reminding them, and sure enough, one right after another, yeah, I'll be there, and we just had tons of people there. It was just incredible. Another occasion, I had talked to Mark, the dentist, and I said, okay, now Mark, you and I are going to get together with Rich, and we're really going to get some things done with him. First of all, I said, we're going to get Jess Asper, who used to play pro tennis. I said, Jess and I will stand you and Rich, because Rich is the PR man for the Chargers, really prideful, really got it together. And I said, we are going to just whoop him, and then we're going to talk to him. So I prayed all week, and I said, Mark, now, if the Lord can enable us to do things, if He can enable me to preach, and He can enable me to do things, let's you and I pray that He'll enable me to play well, to deal with my attitude, and beat this guy. So it was great. Mark was on his team, and I said, now, Mark, you got to play well. He said, oh, yeah, don't worry. But, he was cracking up during the whole time, And after it was all over, Rich said, man, that was the most humiliating thing that's ever happened to me. And so we were walking home, and it was real late, and I had told Mark, I said, we're going to talk to him after the game, but it was like 11 o'clock. And as we were walking home, Rich mentioned, I've got an appointment at 7. So I thought, well, I've committed this to the Lord, but it's just not going to work. And I was sort of standing there and said, well, it's getting kind of late. And Mark says, Rich, maybe the three of us ought to get together and talk sometime. I felt like a real fool. Here I told Mark what we were going to do, and he was taking the initiative. He's 2 weeks old as a Christian. I said, Rich, there's some things that I think there's some misunderstandings we need to clarify. Can we get together this week? And, of course, he hemmed and hawed. And When you tell somebody that, they want to find out what you're talking about immediately. So we had a great talk that night. And it's just been committing ourselves to the Lord and just making ourselves follow through with that commitment. And God opens the doors every time. It's unbelievable. But I think a lot of us are so frightened. And I'm telling you, I'm intimidated 90% of the time by those people. And I'm frightened, and I tend to be lazy. But we are just, we're dogging it out. We're sheer dogged endurance and hard work and faith. Okay, so you got to scout out the land. You've got to relinquish the reins, and then you got to rekindle the flame, okay? Rekindle the flame. You got to be energetic, and you've got to be deliberate. You've got to be deliberate about your evangelism in every situation, especially in your neighborhood. Let me read you another scripture in Philippians that has meant a lot to us. Philippians chapter 1, in verse 27, it says, "Then whether I come and see you or only hear about you in my absence, I will know that you stand firm in one spirit, contending the faith of the gospel, without being frightened in any way by those who intimidate you. This is a sign to them that they will be destroyed, but that you will be saved, and that by God." We've got to rekindle the flame, get energetic, not allow that intimidation to veer us off course, to work hard, to be intense, and to not fear involvement with these people, social and otherwise, in any way, shape, or form. By meeting people, walking the neighborhoods and just meeting people. We had our house, our landscape designed in such a way that we put our patio out in the front, where everybody hangs out in the back of their homes. We put a patio out in the front. We carry our table out there and have dinner out there every once in a while. And we had a non-Christian couple over one night and had dinner out there, and another couple in the neighborhood just felt compelled to come up and talk to us because we were visible, we were out there, we were not being frightened. I mean, I do feel a little foolish eating out in my front yard, right? Because you don't do that. You hang out in the rear, you barbecue in the rear, and you carry out your table from the living room. It doesn't look quite right, an antique oak table out there in the front, but it's great. On another occasion, we were having dinner with a non-Christian couple who are now Christians, and Shelley and Greg, a couple from the church, and another couple that we'd invited to dinner walked by, who had declined, by the way. They walked by, and I said, "See what you're missing?" You see, do not be frightened. Take chances. Get intense. Get deliberate. Be a little weird. Okay. Now, another thing is, they've had things like they had a St. Patrick's Day party. Almost everybody on our block happens to be Catholic. And most of them are Irish. It's really weird. I mean, not that being Irish is weird, just that, that's what happened. So they had a St. Patrick's Day party, and really, we wrestled with it. I did. We talked about it. I wrestled with it. Oh, boy, I know there's going to be booze, and everybody's going to be drunk. And, really, should we go to this thing? And I'm telling you, there's something about not being frightened in any way, under any circumstances, in any social involvement with people that really has an impact. We went to that party that night, and there were a couple of people that were drunk, and we met a lot of people we didn't know. But the neat thing about it that night was that Mark and Maureen, they were in their running phase. They came to the party late that night. Mark and Maureen are both, Irish and Catholic. And they hadn't been to church for a long time. They'd been running, and they came that night and saw us there. And, of course, Mark was not going to drink a lot with us there. And he said, as we were leaving that night at about 12, and it was a Saturday night, Rita said, "Are we going to see you in church tomorrow?" And he said, "Is that how you said it or something?" He said, "I guess I ought to be there tomorrow, huh?" She said, "Well, it'd be great." And he was there for the first time in a while. Other contacts that we made that night, the people who hosted it are people we're working with right now. But they're seeing us in those situations, not being frightened in any way. It's a sign to them that they are perishing, but that we're being saved, walking by faith. There's some things that they've initiated. We've initiated a lot of things, and Rita's going to discuss that in a minute. But they initiated things like, one of them is a Spaniard. And so he initiated a paella party. I don't know if you know what paella valenciana is, but he initiated that. So we went to that. Again, they had booze there, and, things were going on, but we felt we needed to be there. They initiated it. By holding your standard something, I'm not talking about compromise, but by thinking you're holding a standard and not going to something separates you from people a lot of times. And we can go and not violate our consciences and not cause a rift, but rather cause a unity of that hill that we're talking about. And we had a paella party, the St. Patrick's party. We had an Easter egg hunt, which, I went to, of course. We had a 4th of July croquet tournament, I played croquet when I was 5. But you go to these things. We had a 4th of July parade in our community, not in our neighborhood, but in the whole community had a parade that we went to. And if you don't have these things, then start them. It is great involvement, and people may bring booze and drink booze. It's okay? Just get in there and shine like stars and get in there and meet people, make contacts. We were inviting people to church at St. Patrick's Day party. It was great. Maybe that's why there were so few drunks. Maybe that's what it was. I don't know. But we really decided that we were not going to let fear keep us back. We were not going to be frightened in any way or intimidated to the point of holding back in any way.
Well, those were some things that our neighborhood initiated. Here are some things that we tried to initiate socially. I started the play group. I had a Halloween party for the kids in the neighborhood. For Halloween, I made homemade popcorn balls. I mean, it was a popcorn ball factory in my kitchen. I used all these popcorn balls, and I put my name and my address and my phone number on it so people would recognize my name somewhere along the line.
She also put, "This candy is safe."
Yeah. We did Christmas. And I put my name and my address and my phone number on it so people would recognize my name somewhere along the line.
She also put, "This candy is safe."
We did Christmas caroling. We got some of the people from our church to go Christmas caroling through our neighborhood. We had a little Christmas party for the kids, and I invited our puppeteers from our church to come and do a little skit for the kids. It was wonderful. They taught them all about the spirit of giving and everything, and everybody just loved it. Every holiday that there is, I rack my brain. Everything I can think of. I can think, some kind of little gift. I feel like a florist woman driving around, dropping off all these plants and flowers at everybody's house, to give them a little something at every holiday. And people, not that it really entails all that much, but it really means something to people. And they just really have been overwhelmed. A shower for Maureen. We had a Panamanian night one night because Annie's from Panama. We opened up our garage and put a bunch of tables, and we had 27 people that night of just people coming in for Panamanian food, music, and decorations. We do a lot of going to movies, playing sports. I took up a tennis class just to spend time with my neighbors, and 2 out of the 3 women that I was taking the class with are people that have become Christians or will in a week or two. And then when Sherwin and the singers came through, it was a wonderful time. We had Sherwin, Stella, and Helen Beatty perform for our neighbors in my home, and it was just wonderful. People were blown away. They could not believe that Christians could be that talented after meeting us.
Really, that is something that we struggle with in that neighborhood because people are so with it that they think we're duds. That's why beating Rich that night was, they think we're such duds. And then when Stella and Sherwin, I couldn't believe it. Stella was sitting there. We had everybody sitting in our we have a pit like for living room, and she was standing up on this 2 stairs up where the piano was, and she would just sit there going. And they were just and everybody remarked about Stella's eyes and her giving and how she was really into it and literally went home shaking their heads and the way we knew these is because either they were people we were studying with or we were studying with their wives, their husbands, and we would get it through the other person. It's just incredible if you think about things. And we were just being ourselves. We were just showing them what a great relationship we have with one another, what a great life it is, and they were blown away. And again, this may sound, by everything we said, that we're preaching a social gospel. We are not at all. And one of the things we want to talk about today, which we don't have a whole lot of time, is discipleship. I'm going to get into that. And to let you know that the disciples we're making, I told Mark, the dentist, I said, Mark, it took me 10 years to get where you are today. Weeks old. And his evangelism and his discipleship and what he's doing. I said, it took me 10 years to get where you are today. We're not preaching a social gospel, but we are being sociable. We are using what God has given us, and we are walking by faith. Let me just tell you about hospitality. I mentioned that earlier as far as the dormitory concept. We have everyone to dinner that we want to work with. Okay, we have them to dinner one time in our neighborhood. Again, get them into your room. And don't expect people to reciprocate. We don't even expect that anymore. Tony and Christina is the one who's about to become a Christian. And Tony, her husband, I've been working with, and he's going to be a Christian. We had him over at least 6 times before they ever invited us over. And when they did, it was with another group of people. It was with a larger group of people. Don't expect people to reciprocate. We're not doing it because we want them in our homes. We treat them like kings. We had one couple over and they said, "Man, do you do this for everybody you invite to dinner?" I said, "Only for the special ones, and you're special." And that's the way people feel when they come to our home. We want them to feel that way. We get out the china, or we get out the depression glass that people got 40 years ago and does detergent or something, but makes them feel great, And we just want everybody over to dinner. We want them to see our lives. We want them to share. Listen, in that neighborhood, people don't invite each other into each other's houses. It is incredible. Rich, the guy that we played tennis with, has been very jealous because Mark became a Christian. And he's, Mark and I were such great friends, and you've taken him away from us and all this kind of garbage. I said, "Mark, is that true?" He said, "They've never even had us in their house for dinner the whole time we've lived here." He said, "And we spent more time with him since we become Christians than before. But he sees me as his great friend." People don't invite each other in. So bring them in. Use what God has given you. We plan ahead. We just try to fill our schedule with dinners and things to do with people, movies and dinners and games. We have people probably on an average 3 times a week, sometimes more than that for dinner. Okay? And one night, we had our dinner, our couple cancel on us. And we prayed about it, and I got on the phone, and I just started calling. Just went down the list of people, just started calling people one after another, people that we'd never done anything with, that we wanted to get to know. Just call them one right after another. And it was really hard for me, but we really believe this is important. And nobody showed up that night. Like I said, sometimes God gives you that respite that you need. But we had been able to set up other things and plan ahead and be deliberate because we wanted people in our homes. And now it's gotten to the point where it's a little harder because the word has gotten out that if the Lindos invite you into their home, watch out. So, but we believe very strongly in hospitality. And again, people rarely reciprocate, so don't feel bad, but use what you've been given for God.
We made some changes as far as reviving our fervor. We made some changes in our Bible studies, in our group Bible studies. Annie's going to be talking about the changes in our personal Bible studies. But last fall, I started a series from Creative Counterpart, and 5 of my neighbors came the first day, and that was so exciting to me. But as time went on, by the end of the study, I noticed we just weren't getting up over the hump of having 4 or 5 visitors, and so we started a new series called Children, Reward or Regret, and made up little flyers, and I had Shelley Metton, one of our deacons' wives, one of my prayer partners, come in to teach the class, and she's a professor of anatomy at San Diego State, and of course I wrote all of her credentials down there, and mother of 2 older children, and so everybody was just so impressed just by getting this little flyer about who is this Shelley Metton, who's coming here to teach it. And they came in and they just loved it, and it just really caught on. People were really excited about it. And we jumped from having 4 to 5 visitors to having 14 to 18 visitors through that series. Later on in the summer, we started another series called Putting Romance Back into Your Marriage. And all the women are just so excited. We've been averaging about 16 to 18 visitors on that one. And all the women were saying, we've got to get something like this for our husbands going, So we're going to be starting something like that in the fall for couples.
Let me tell you real briefly about our personal Bible study, something that Steve and Lisa Johnson from New York shared with us that has been so helpful. We ordered them. We had them shipped up here from San Diego, and we were going to pass them out today, but Federal Express didn't come through. I'm sorry. Should be here sometime this afternoon. But we came up with a lesson plan, and basically what we do with people on the block, we have them over for dinner, okay, and immediately we'll start sharing with them. And in fact, we've even had Christians in with us. We'll have another Christian couple just to show them, because I think a lot of Christian couples have people over for dinner, but they don't get into spiritual conversations. Is that true? They don't know what to do. So we've been training people in our congregation how to do it, so we'll get into a conversation immediately. And what we're working toward is to get people to come to church or to Bible study initially. Then secondly, to get into the Word themselves. Then once they've started coming to church or to Bible study or both, once they're reading on their own, then we get involved in an 8-lesson plan with them. Starts out talking about the Word of God, and Boston does this too. There's a little bit more, there's more to theirs. We've tried to capsulize it a little more. The Word of God, the kingdom, discipleship, light and darkness, counting the cost, denominations, something else. I left 2 out, but yeah, it's light and darkness. But anyway, it's a lesson plan. And what we believe is that we've got to get them into the Word on their own, and they've got to show earnestness. We're not there to suck people into the kingdom, to coerce them in, to plead them in, to bait them in. We want them to see our lives, and we speak very directly with them. We get to the point where, and I wanted to talk about this today, we have very loving but very honest and confrontive relationships. We talk to them about their children, we talk to them about their marriage, we talk to them about their pride, we talk to them about anything that will start opening them up to seeing themselves and dealing with their lives. But they've got to show earnestness by coming to church, by reading the Bible on their own before we do this lesson plan. And basically, everybody that we've done this plan with has become a Christian or is about to. And that really cuts down on the time that we used to spend studying and studying and studying and studying and studying, and then the person says, well, I don't think I want it. It just shouldn't be that way. We shouldn't be wasting our time. So what we do is we begin by initiating and initiating and initiating and initiating, and then after we've planted the seed and cultivated it, we start backing off and expect them to start being earnest and initiating and studying and reading and coming. We're still getting in there, asking questions, getting them into their Bible, but this lesson plan, we don't do it unless they're really that earnest. We want people in the kingdom that want to be in the kingdom. We want people that are disciples, and I'm really trying to get to that part. The other thing that we are doing is categorizing people into front burner and back burner. The front burner people are the people that are just really with it. They want it, they're desirous of it, they're going for it, they'll do anything. And those are the people we spend our time with, most of our time with, every day with, okay? When we first had Mark and Maureen over for dinner, we obviously brought up Christianity, God, everything, and they were talking about the Catholic Church and how much they hated it. And I said, well, look, Mark, I'm not here to invite you to church or to give you an alternative to church. If you want to find God and have a relationship with Him, I can help you. And that's what I want to do for you. We're just up front with them. So we don't want you coming to our church just because you're tired of the Catholic Church. Because their problem was not being tired of the Catholic Church. Their problem was they needed to be saved. And I had to get that through his head in a very tactful well, I guess tactful would be the best way. You need a relationship. I didn't tell him he was going to hell. I just said, you need a relationship. That's what I can give you. And so he became a front burner person. We said, that's what I want. At one point, though, as I said, he started running. So then he became a back burner person. And, we would have him over to our house. We'd do things with him. But only to keep up the relationship, to keep them in tune with the light, to keep them aware of what they needed to do, to keep them aware of what really had to happen. But then we started focusing on Tony and Christina, which is where the neighborhood is resting. When they become Christians, everybody become Christians. Well, the Lord had other plans. They backed off, and Mark and Maureen became front burners. So now they became back burners for a while. Mark and Maureen became Christians, and obviously they have become the key to our Bible study and to our evangelistic efforts. By the way, something else that we do, and we didn't plan it this way, it just worked out. I study with Rita's people. She stays with mine because they're all ours. One morning, Drew was sick. She was supposed to study with one of the ladies. So she said, Andy, could you take it for me? I said, sure, I'll go down there. And I studied with 2 ladies because she was taking care of Drew. On another occasion, she went down to study with 2 ladies, and one of the husbands wasn't working that day, a guy I was working with, so he sat in on the study, and she studied with all 3 of them. So it's sort of like, just really working together and making sure that we're open, earnest people that really want it. Those are the ones that we want to share with. Now, making disciples, we believe in Matthew 28. We believe that we've got to make disciples first and then baptize them. That's been our goal. We believe that they have got to know what it's all about and then do it and then be baptized. And these people are kingdom-minded. Let me just give you a couple of things. When we were staying with Mark and Maureen, we would tell Mark, I want you to invite Rich to church. I want you to share with Jim, who was his partner. We would just tell him these things all the time. We told we told Maureen, Mark's wife, we want you to share with Mary Wynn. She said, oh, no. Andy, you can ask me to do anything. Just don't ask me to share my faith. She's not even a Christian. You got to share with Mary Wynn. The next day, she calls us up and she says, Andy, I got to talk to you and Rita, get down here right away. I said, oh, boy. She's got something happened. We went down and she said, I got good news and bad news. She said, Mary Wynn is coming to church Sunday. Great. What's the bad news? Don't pressure her when she comes, okay? So what do you mean? She said, well, she feels if she comes once and she'll be pressured into coming again. I said, okay, Maureen, I won't say anything, but what would you do in my situation, or what are you going to do if she comes Sunday? What will you do? Now, she's not a Christian. She says, well, I guess I'll have to pressure her. Okay? Now, Mark does things like this. He asked his partner, Jim, he said, Jim, we're having the Crossroads Singers at church. We really want you to be there. What do you say? Jim said, I can't come. I don't think my wife wants to come. He said, Mark said, do you mind if I call your wife? He said, no, just don't tell her what I said. So fine. So Mark gets on the phone, calls Jim's wife, says, you know what we talk about? How are we going to get this guy to become a Christian? What's our plan? What's our game plan? He'll come up to me and say, hey, brother, how you doing? Great. Hey, listen, Bill Bailey's coming to church. Bill Bailey? Are you serious? He is kingdom-minded. He comes up and he says, brother, if they only knew how great this was, we got to get this word out. He said, this is going to spread like crazy. Let's get out and do it. I said, okay, let's do it. Listen, we have got to make disciples. We've got to make disciples. Go into all the world, make disciples, and baptize them and teach them to obey. Alex, this one guy that I'm working with, had to go to Berkeley for 5 weeks to go to school. He's not a Christian yet. We had 3 studies. We had the Word, the Kingdom, and Sin. Oh, that's one of the ones I left out, Sin. And he went up to Berkeley. The next Sunday, he got up there on a late Sunday night. The next Sunday, he had 5 people in church from his class. And they had to drive 40 minutes to get to church. His wife, who's going to be baptized when we get back, right before we left, we said, Diane, what's holding you back? She said, I'm just having trouble sharing with everybody I meet. I just don't know if I'm ready to become a Christian yet. See, we share with everybody we meet, and she knows that. That's the standard. Not that we say you must do that before you can become a Christian, but that's what she recognizes is going to have to happen. She's going to have to go into all the world. She's going to have to share with everyone. She's going to have to give her life away. And what she's saying is, I'm not sure I'm ready to do that yet. I'm counting the cost. But this is what making disciples is really all about. And we've got to make disciples in our neighborhoods if we're expecting to win our neighborhoods for Christ.
One thing that I've really tried to stress is making the discipleship group in the neighborhood before they become Christians. I've gotten a lot of 3-way studies going. Once I know a person says, I want to become a Christian, and they've already committed themselves to that, even though they're not ready to quite yet, I'll go ahead and get them involved with a 3-way study so that their first conversion, Maureen became a Christian 6 weeks ago. Her first conversion happened 2 weeks after she became a Christian. You see, because we were already studying in a 3-way study with one of her friends. And if you get them into a 3-way study, that's teaching them how to study with other people, but it's also reinforcing the lesson that they learned 2 or 3 weeks ago, you see. And that's been so exciting. She started out saying, oh, just don't ask me to share my faith. Then we got her to the point of sharing her faith with just the neighbors. She said, that's fine, but just don't ask me to share my faith with strangers. But because she's been around us and she knows our lives, now as a Christian, right before I left, Maureen said, Rita, can you tell me how to share your faith when you only have 2 minutes with somebody? This is a six-week-old Christian. Maureen and I studied with Mary Wynn. Mary Wynn and I have been studying with Diane, who's going to be baptized when we get back. And Diane and I have been studying with Christina, who will probably be becoming a Christian in 2 or 3 weeks. And it's just been so exciting because what we'll do is we'll have a little discipleship group right there in Loire Valley. And I was only Christian starting out, but we'll just talk about, okay, who shared with this lady? And, oh, there's a new lady who moved in. Why don't you ask her to Bible study? Why don't you get a friendship going with so-and-so? And, this person over here has kind of a bad attitude now about Bible study. Can you go back and tell her what you're learning from Bible study? We just talk so candidly because they already have the kingdom on straight. They know what it's all about. And the more I expect out of them, they're just growing so fast. And it's something that they really expect out of themselves.
There's a lot more we want to share with you, but we recognize we need to cut it off here. Let me just say a couple things in closing. I really believe that what we've tried to do this morning is just give you a vision, inspire you for what's happening. I believe that this can happen in every single neighborhood. Maybe to varying degrees, okay? I recognize that. Some more, some less. But I guess the key is, are we walking by faith and are we working our hardest and making disciples? Are we really giving it everything we've got? And if you put some of these principles into practice and get out there and work and have faith and make disciples, you will see great things happening in neighborhoods. And it will spread like wildfire into other neighborhoods and into the workplace, and we will be doing what God really intended for us to do. And I really ask you not to write it off and say, oh, that's an ideal neighborhood, he's got everything just right, da-da-da-da-da-da-da. Don't write it off. Take what we said today and try to implement it in any and every way you possibly can. Pray to God for wisdom, for strength, for opportunities, and really do great things for the Lord in your neighborhoods. Let me read you a poem as we close, and then we'll be dismissed. Somebody said it couldn't be done, but he with a chuckle replied that maybe it couldn't, but he would be one who wouldn't say so till he tried. So he buckled right in with a trace of a grin. If he worried, he hit it. He started to sing as he tackled the thing that couldn't be done, and he did it. Somebody scoffed, oh, you'll never do that. At least no one ever has done it. But he took off his coat, and he took off his hat, and the first thing we knew, he'd begun it. With a lift of his chin and a bit of a grin, without any doubting or quit it, he started to sing as he tackled the thing that couldn't be done, and he did it. There are thousands to tell that it cannot be done. There are thousands to prophesy failure. There are thousands to point out to you, one by one, the dangers that wait to assail you. But just buckle in with a bit of a grin. Just take off your coat and go to it. Just start to sing as you tackle a thing that cannot be done. And you, brothers and sisters, will do it. God be with you. Thank you very much.